So I have one last question, and here it is. We've talked about so much. If there was one takeaway that you wanted the C-suite executives that are tuning in today, what would be the one thing that you would want to make sure that they took away from our conversation?
I'd say maybe my key takeaway will be just always sometimes just find a couple of minutes at the end of the day, or wherever you have some time, and then just really look at what you're doing and just ask yourself the tough questions on, am I doing this to reach my quarterly numbers, or are these decisions in line with my long-term goals? And I'm not saying that all of your decisions need to be anchored to your long-term goals. But again, can you sit down and honestly say that the path that you're on 2-3 years from now, you're looking back and say, yeah, these decisions were all anchored in the long-term goals? Or were you always trying to fix the fire of that particular day, which fixes whatever needs fixing on the short term, but it's just going to delay where you need to be?
We get so busy with the day-to-day, the fires, that we can look back a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and think, that's all I did, right? I was just putting out fires, but I lost that North Star, right? I lost where we have to be proactive. And that's what I'm taking away from what you're saying here is that we can't lose the long-term vision while we're accomplishing the short-term goals. And that balance is, I think, is so important. But when you first said the North Star is NRR, I was like, hallelujah, right? Because I knew then that you had a very, very balanced perspective on long-term development and growth of your existing clientele, right? In the end, that's what every new business prospect wants to see anyways, is that your existing clients have stayed with you a long time and they're growing in all the ways that you're helping them, right? It really does help on both sides.
I think maybe one more piece of advice, which again, I think it's a no-brainer as well, but depending on the organization, there's a big difference, right? If your organization is founder-led or not. So like the voice of the customer that we just talked about, if it's founder-led, more often than not, the voice of the customer is very well known by the founders, right? I mean, they started from whenever they started. They grew to business to wherever they are. And I'm sure that the conversation that you have with founders is that they always had that passion around the customer. It's innate, right? It's a default setting. They'll work on the customer support department one day out of the week just to get that feedback. I think for everyone listening as part of the executive team, if you came in at a later stage of growth, to remind yourself that you need to make the time in your agenda to listen in on calls, even if it's only once a month. Like we all have recording programs within RevOrg. So either join them live, which is, I think, always the best thing to do, or just go through the recordings, make sure you get that unfiltered feedback, because otherwise, by the time it reaches your ears, it already has gone through a couple of layers, right? So then it's an opinion about an opinion. It's always good to jump on those calls yourself every now and then and get that unfiltered truth.